program is sponsored in part by To a Woman's Heart. The thoughts and views expressed by the following production don't necessarily reflect those of the network or any sponsors.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, Dr. Hill. How are you?
Hanging. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm hanging too, ready for some good food. I just want to give a brief introduction. Dr. Hill holds a BA in English from Jackson State University and MA in Political Science from the University of Central Oklahoma, an MA in English Literature from Grambling State University, and a PhD in Humanities with an English Literature core from the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. Her research involves the autobiography of Malcolm X, popular culture, and the African American biography. Dr. Hill is currently a visiting assistant professor at the illustrious Clark Atlanta University, where she teaches English and humanities courses. Please welcome the final contributor to The People, Dr. Tamara Hill.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Your literary work, I'm just going to go ahead and give it to everyone. It's The Souls of Protest and Resistance from James Brown, Marvin Gaye, and Kendrick Lamar, better known as the Godfather of Soul, Prince of Motown, and The Chosen One. I am definitely a fan of all three, and they have impacted me as I am a lover of all music, Dr. Hill. The fact that you have a PhD in humanities with an English literature core, it wasn't a shock that you chose the structure you did for this thoughtful piece. Dr. Hill, you covered James Brown, Marvin Gaye, and Kendrick Lamar's journeys like a true journalist. You really did. And with a highly informative tone. What inspired the process of your research over the eras you chose, and why these artists and no one else?
I think because I grew up in a household where my parents played Marvin Gaye and they played James Brown, and I love Kendrick Lamar. So James was played in my household, but I didn't know who he was until he was in Rocky.
Yes.
Being in America, that's as close as I could get. And then Marvin Gaye, I heard my dad play that "What's Going On," and I didn't understand, but I liked the melody, right? And
Right.
So then when he did "Sexual Healing," I was like, "You can't sing that. You can't sing that." But I was like, okay, but I listened to it anyway. So then I get married, have my daughter, and I remember when she was 3, and Kendrick was on the radio, and he said, "Please don't kill my vibe." I'm doing a clean version. And she says, "Mommy and Daddy, please don't kill my vibe." She was 3. I was like, "Are you serious? You don't have a vibe at 3." But now she's 15, or no, she'll be 15 this summer. And last year, we got a chance to see Kendrick, and he is truly phenomenal. But I look at those artists or people, like we just not say musical artists, the people who are willing to give up their celebrity, to sacrifice their celebrity, to speak up for what's right. And that's what inspired me. I look at LeBron, I look at the young black males who are at Howard University because of Trayvon Martin, who got shot and killed in a hoodie. They were willing to step up and protest, regardless of what was happening. And again, I grew up with Muhammad Ali saying, "I'm so pretty." He would tell Howard Cosell, he said, "You ugly, I'm so pretty." But he was willing to give up whatever he had obtained in order to speak out for what's right. He said he had nothing to deal with or do with the Viet Cong because they did nothing to him as an individual. Why would he go over and fight? And so that's why I was so inspired to say these particular 3 artists. And because Kendrick had the name from the Temptations, which is our theme song at Jackson State University, getting ready because here we come, that really kicked it off for me. That's how I could see the correlation.
Well, reading these stories, Dr. Hill, I was also feeling nostalgic as I was reading it. And Marvin Gaye is a huge person in my discography, along with Kendrick Lamar, especially his works over, even Judas and the Black Messiah,
Exactly.
James Brown, he's pivotal, but he's also iconic for those who are in popular culture, like Michael Jackson, and they all speak to some level of humanity. So I appreciate your contributions there. Throughout the literary work, there are some in touch places that I can recognize that you took a long time to think about where you're going to be pulling your citations or your research, so to speak, from. How did you choose that, and for the purpose of building a better dynamic for the story?
I think as an academic and just as a writer, I've always been taught to balance everything out, right? It's the good, the bad, and the ugly.
You got to have support, right?
You got to have support, right? And so as much as I love them as people and or as celebrities, they were people and they were flawed, right? And so if I don't present all those sides, then my work is not, it's not objective. It's not where you can read and say, okay, she caught this, but yet he did this. Because let's be clear, James Brown was very adamant about, if he didn't get paid, he was not going to perform I'm Black and I'm Proud. And they gave in, the councilman gave in to him. And so then you have to wonder, like, was he really about the people? It was about his money. I didn't know this as a kid growing up. Again, when I saw James Brown, he was on a run from the police and he was in Rocky. That's all I can remember. And his wife was coming to jail to roll his hair. That's what I remember. God forgive me. But doing the research, it gave me a different insight about him, right? And so as they're writing, I tell that to my students, whether people like it or not, you have to present all sides because it can't be totally biased. And if you're presenting a story about, especially an iconic figure like James Brown, you have to be real about it. You have to be real about Marvin Gaye and the depression he went through. And maybe some of his depression even fueled his music initiatives that he wanted to take on. Like I talk about how him and Barry got into it. Again, I didn't know that him and Barry had a fight about him doing what's going on. Because Barry said, look, you're a crooner. You sing love songs. This is what we want. And Barry goes, nah, I'm gonna sing this. And the song was really supposed to go to someone else, and he took it and twerked it, and he said, you know what, I'm not doing nothing else until you get this off the shelf. That is a backstory, and people need to know that, because I would have never known that. And when it came out, it was so beautiful and profound, right? And so those are the things that people need to know. It's not just the music, but what inspires that music. It's popular culture. It's part of my culture. And we have to know, in the music industry, everything is not perfect. I just read a story the other day about Method Man and Mary J. Blige, the song for You're All I Need, and how the lady who really came up with the thought or the concept got no credit. So to me, it's always that backstory that provides the basis of what I'm writing, right? Because it can't just be all, roses and perfume. It's just not like that in real life.
And a thing about backstories, as I was reading, I was waiting on you to throw in that he also rebelled in creating the Marriage and Divorce album, Marvin Gaye, that is, during that same time. And the development of himself as a man went from this soft, poor person to somebody who was, at their wits' end. Everything was just boiling out from the top. And this was his time to his authentic self that had been so much suppressed as a young man. And
for Barry to control the narrative, it was even funny when I read how Marvin married Barry's sister, and they eventually got a divorce or whatever. But the way they wanted to craft the narrative and how that was going to come out, he was just like as you said, he was fed up. And what was it? The myth or the rumor was Stevie Wonder was blind, but he could see how Barry Gordy was beating him all of that money. Yes. Everybody had an issue with Barry when it was all said and done. So let's be clear, there were some things going on. There was some tea that people didn't want to come out. But I do think, regardless of how it came out or how they got it together in the studio, there was still this profound, emphatic music that we needed to hear in our community. And whether it was then or is Kendrick Lamar now, it is necessary.
Now, this is in relation to being pro-Black, and I know that you know where I'm going with this. Throughout this story, Dr. Hill, there's a theme of Black pride carrying the stigma of negativity when we have intended on promoting positivity as a collective. James Brown, he was demonized, if you will, for yelling, "I'm Black and I'm proud." Marvin Gaye was judged for asking the necessary question, "What's going on?" and exited Motown from Berry Gordy's control, while Kendrick Lamar was judged on BET performance, particularly by Geraldo Rivera for All Right performance. Almost every other organization and nationality, ethnicity, and almost every other cause can take pride in themselves. Why do we believe that we can do this why can't we do this without challenge, rather?
I think we do it in spite of where we come from, right? Because if you look at Kendrick Lamar, Muhammad Ali, The Temptations, Diana Ross, all the obstacles that they face, as a people, we are resilient. So regardless of what they think or what they perceive or how where we should be in society, or where we should be or what they think we should accomplish, it doesn't matter. We're going to be heard. We're a voice. I was telling my students the other day, I said, in your lifetime, you've had a Black president not once but twice. You've had a sister who's been a first lady. Now, we have not seen her cut up on Barack or President Obama. I'm waiting for that to come because I know that day is coming. We have a vice president who's Asian and Black. That means that there's no limitation to what you can do. And you cannot sit up and make excuses. I can't do this and I'm limited by this, because your forefathers had nothing and they made dreams out of nothing. You are your ancestors' dreams. And so for Black people, it is always about, unfortunately, as my father has said, about proving ourselves, showing that we're better. And regardless of what other people think, other people are culture vultures. We come out with a dance, they take it over. We come out with a hairstyle, they take it over. Our words, our history, our flair, our fashion, our style, our food, it is always being duplicated, but never, it's never perfect, right? Appreciated, right? As my kids say, a culture vulture. Because as a kid, I can remember when, and I'm going to date myself, but I can remember when Bo Derek ran down the beach with the cornrows. And it was like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. Sis, let's just stop. I'm sorry. The editor, Susan Taylor of Essence Magazine, wore cornrows. Stevie Wonder wore cornrows. And then when fast forward to Kim Kardashian wearing cornrows, she comes out with a new style. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We cannot do that. We have to take pride in ourselves. We have to own what we've done to this civilization. We have to own what we've contributed, and we cannot let anybody diminish our contributions, regardless of what they think. Because we're here to stay. You brought us over on a boat. We didn't ask to come. So that's that. Let's be about our business. I don't have time for that. And I just feel like we're always having to prove what we're worth and show our greatness some kind of way. And if it wasn't for us, there would be no Elvis Presley, right? If it wasn't for us, it wouldn't be the Lindy Hop. You can watch the Lindy Hop and see women twerking in the Lindy Hop, and it's 2023. That just shows you,
You're absolutely
keeping it
right.
100.
Yeah,
you can look at the African tribes and they're twerking, and it's a Lindy Hop. And you see Black women twerking. There's nothing new that we can't do. Our hairstyles are unique. And one of my students made the comment. She said, I get tired of people copying us. I said, but what they don't recognize is how they brought us to the country. We had to make do. We weren't even allowed to wear turbans and stuff. We had to wear turbans on our hair just to cover up our hairstyles. So I think, like you said, it's this idea that we always have to fight for our place, no matter what we accomplish. We've had a Black president twice, and we're still fighting. Yes. We are our ancestors' dreams, and we can't make excuses. We can't get this done. They had nothing and got a whole lot of stuff done, And so for me, I think that's what we're always being diminished, but we will never be denied. That's where I see us as a people.
We will always shine. Yes, regardless. You mentioned several events, one I can recall as Bloody Thursday. It seems there are a lot of events that are untold in our classrooms and homes, and you can probably look at the story of Thanksgiving as one of those. Like me, do you feel like it is our duty to share with the youth the truth of Black history, good and bad?
I do. I teach English, but I teach the story of the exonerated five. I was a kid. I'm going to date myself again. I didn't quite understand all the nuances of going to the story. I remember reading about Donald Trump, but I teach that to my students because it's like the same things are happening, just happen in different formats. You guys have cell phones. That's the only difference. I remember seeing Rodney King on television, and ironically, I taught at Morehouse last semester. I had a gentleman who was 70-some years old. He was like, I was there at the scene. I worked at actual incident, and he told the class about it. So I feel like it is my responsibility to teach my students about different things, and it's amazing that they're unaware of what Black people have accomplished. For instance, one of my students made a comment about the KKK in the presentations, and I said that, a Black woman took down the KKK because they lynched her son, and they all kind of looked at me like, huh? I said, go look it up. I'm not going to tell you anymore, because a Black woman actually bankrupted the KKK. Or this idea that Ava DuVernay reached out to Feinstein from when she did the piece on When They See Us, and Feinstein's like, I have nothing to say to you. But all of this, because she did her piece, it crushed anything Feinstein was doing. So for me, it's like I'm always teaching a piece of history because I realize that they are not aware. And then when I teach humanities, I give them the true story of Christopher Columbus, and it's just amazing to see their comments, because they're like, oh my God, I've been learning this in school. They never told me that. We shouldn't talk about Christopher Columbus. And so for me, it's like, let me open your eyes to what really you should be knowing. Because I realized when I was in school, the only thing I learned about history was the triangle trade, the slaves, the sugar and the rum. Then we jumped to slavery. Then we jumped to Lincoln freeing us. And then somehow or another, we skipped all to Dr. King. And
yeah,
that
and
just
now we're learning and relearning that we may very well have not even been a part of that triangular trade, and we're actually indigenous to this land. I mean, it's so much that we can build on, and I like that we have the opportunity to be in this time, similar to what Chadwick Boseman spoke to in his acceptance speech for a PhD in human capital, that we're in this time right now for a particular reason, and it's our duty to know.
Right. We have a responsibility to teach the youth behind us, because if we don't, they're lost. And if it hadn't been for my father and my mother making me read about Egyptian history, I came home and my father was upset because I said Elizabeth Taylor was Cleopatra. In his own way. I was 5, and I think my dad probably cursed me out in his own way. But he laid out all the books. He was like, no, Elizabeth is a blue-eyed woman. And so now I find myself doing the same thing with my students, because they're not informed and are not aware of all the things we've done. And they know it's on social media, but they're not reading and understanding how all this is narrated for them, right? Because just in the instance of Black shows being on television, and we're talking about music and media, the same thing. There was nothing on TV that was Black except for The Cosby Show, Living Single, NYP, Undercover. All these different shows. It's the same thing. It's like, okay, now society is reflecting what we're really going through, and I need you guys to be aware how we're being portrayed in the media, and even in our songs, what's happening in the song. So it's a different concept for them.
New York Undercover was truly underrated, and it needs to come back for everybody to see.
Right, and them boys were fine. Let me just say, for all the sisters, them brothers were fine. Okay, they were fine. I watch them now. I tape them now on the DVR, and I see Torres and Malik, yes, on a regular basis. Yes, I do. So I'm going to put it right there.
Why did I get married for Malik? He stays.
Yes. Him and Janet, like, yes, honey, New York Undercover, honey. And then you get a chance to see all the artists, like when they were just kind of starting out with Brandy and Mary J. Blige and Levert, and it's just great to even watch. It's still good TV. So I watch them sometimes, and my daughter's like, Mommy, who's that? And it's funny because she wasn't born, anywhere with Tupac, but she knows who Tupac is because she watched Different World. And she knows who Jada is from watching that. So it's this whole connection of, hey, I know who this person is. And she's like, wow, Tupac was profound, right? So, yeah, I keep them on the DVR. I watch them on a regular. And Tommy, who didn't have a job. So,
well, I have just one more question for you to round things out. So Eurocentric practices affect how we treat each other, from colorism to Black on Black crime, dysfunction, family tension, devaluation of ourselves and each other, etc. Do you think music is a better change agent than any other, like activism, protests, and things of that nature?
I don't think it needs to be solely music, but I think music is universal. I do think the protests are necessary. I think media is necessary, journals, literary articles, whatever it is, all of it's necessary, because everybody doesn't relate to a particular song, right? Even if it's universal, like a Michael Jackson can sing, We Are the World or whatnot. But there still needs to be scholarly support for what's out there. Like when
Right.
the Cosby Show came on, I can't think of the psychologist's name at this time, but they literally brought in psychologists and said, okay, these things were happening in a Black family, these things were not. This is how it's going to be perceived. And I think that those studies still help to contribute to what our story is and how it should be told. I made the comment to my students how I watched Roots as a kid, and then the new Roots came out. And the new Kunta Kinte had perfect teeth. T.I. had perfect teeth. And I was like, yo, this ain't right. And they started laughing. I was like, because slaves didn't have perfect white teeth. They didn't get this right. And I'm sorry, it's not Larry, but Lawrence Fishburne was Alex Haley. And then I'm like, he don't look nothing like Alex. So
not Larry.
Exactly. And I love them to death, but like you did not pay it. T.I.'s teeth are perfectly white. Slaves didn't have dental care, right? So, and so I think these things are important when we tell our stories.
We had coconut oil.
We had coconut oil. Okay, some coconut oil. I'll give you that. But Brother Man went to somebody's dentist, like Cardi B. He got a bag and fixed his teeth. Stop playing. But I do think that these things are important because it tells the world how we are, right? It tells them how we exist and how we function. And so I admire how many Black people in Hollywood are now telling our stories, who are taking over studios and saying, hey, this is the Black experience. And I think it is necessary in all the realms, not just one. But music we can all listen to. And I tell my students, it's funny because when I was a kid, there was a song called Self-Destruction from the New York Coast rappers, and it talked about today's topic is self-destruction. Is really at the end of the rap that's bugging, and they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? I said, if you really listen to the words, they're talking about Black on Black crime. They have women talking about losing their sons. They talk about, Heavy D, deep in the heart of the matter, self-destruction served on the platter. It's the same thing that you guys are doing today, but in my generation, it was a little bit more clean, but we keep repeating the same behavior, right? And so I think that there is a connection to music, but I think all the other realms we need to invest in as well, because there's more than one way to tell our story.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Dr. Hill. I want to thank you so much for, just sharing some laughs with me, and also some great information and insight and perspective as to how you developed this profound piece. And thank you for closing out the people and contributing your message here. We want to thank you all so much for being a part of this initiative with us, and being a part of the pre-interview for the virtual reading over From a Black Perspective, The People. Y'all have a great night.
And they'll know I am Christian by my love, yes, they'll know I am Christian by your love, yes, they'll know I am Christian by your love, by your love, by your love. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yes, they'll know. They will know, they will know, they will know. Oh, ooh.
Welcome back to From a Black Perspective. Again, good job, man, Robin and Auntie Renee. Just a light of the story. The comment about the grits, the salt and pepper versus the sugar, but that's another story for another day. And for the record, Auntie Renee is not to be played with. But I'm going to introduce you guys to Dr. Tamara Hill. She has a BA in English from JSU, a MA in Political Science from the University of Central Oklahoma, MA in English Literature from Grambling State University, and a PhD in Humanities with an English core from the illustrious Clark Atlanta University, and other great accomplishments. Her current research involves Malcolm X, pop culture, and African American biography. She is also a wife, mother, and a professor at 3 institutions of higher learning in the Atlanta metro area. Now we'll listen to her reading.
While music historians are uncertain when All Right, the 4th single from the To Pimp a Butterfly album, became a protest anthem, it is without a doubt declares the resilience of Black people, while at the same time has components of the outcries from James Brown, the turbulent 60s, and the Civil Rights Movement. His echo of Gaye's call for peace and love, all while exposing the heaviness of police violence. And denouncing the stereotypes of Black people that continue to plague the nation as a whole can also be perceived in Lamar's All Right lyrics. According to American studies and media scholar William Horns, Lamar's progressive music places him in a long line of African-American artists and activists who work both inside and outside of the mainstream to advance a counterculture that opposes the racist stereotypes propagated in white-owned media and culture. As a young Black man who was once a young Black boy on Section 8, Lamar witnessed the escalating tensions in his own drug-infested community amongst gang members, senseless murders, and the overt tactics used by law enforcement that often occurred in his neighborhood. So it was not difficult for him to use and implement the gritty urban verbiage that described the experiences and emotions of most Black people during 2015 and beyond. Even though race relations between Black people and law enforcement from the summer of 2015 to that currently in 2022 have continued to escalate with violent acts of inequality, Lamar, through his lyrics, declares there is hope and that we, as a people, will stand up to these injustices and continue to fight for those whose voices often go unheard. As contemporary hip-hop artist, and from his perspective, Lamar is acknowledging that we are not dependent on a country built on the backs of our enslaved ancestors to make it all right, but to appreciate and understand our struggle as a people and how music has always provided us with a cathartic release for our hurt and or anger. NPR writer Andrew LeBon explained Lamar's inspiration for All Right and why music is important to him by affirming, the author of the upcoming book promised that you will sing about me, the power and poetry of Kendrick Lamar. Lewis interviewed Lamar after release To Pimp a Butterfly and learned the artist was inspired to write All Right by a trip to South Africa, specifically the cell on Robben Island where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned. Similarly, Lamar told NPR in a 2015 interview that he was thinking about the history of chattel slavery in this country. 400 years ago, as slaves, we prayed and sung joyful songs to keep our heads level-headed with what was going on, Lamar said. 400 years later, we still need that music to heal. And I think that All Right is definitely one of those records that makes you feel good no matter what the times are. By his own recognition, Lamar provides us insight into his inspiration for All Right. Concerning Black oppression and why the history of it continues to manifest for Black people in the forms of police brutality, the lack of economic opportunities, and the mass incarceration of African Americans at an alarming rate when compared to other ethnicities. Consequently, music, especially Black music, has been a healing force in our communities, and so has our relationship with it. As previously acknowledged by James Brown, Marvin Gaye, and now Lamar, Black grotesque music, whether legendary or contemporary, has the potential to not only heal our people, but also to let the world know that we will not continue to be victimized by our oppressors. Additionally, the music video for All Right received 4 nominations at the 2015 MTV Music Awards, including Video of the Year and Best Male Video, confirmed by the radio station 97.9. However, Lamar only won 2 Grammys that night for Best Rap Performance and Best Rap Song for his song, I. On the contrary, it is the intense and powerful live performance of All Right by Lamar that gave the world a visual representation of what struggle looks like for African Americans who constantly have to deal with racism, white supremacy, and in his words, the popo, at the BET Music Video Awards in 2015. In his live performance on BET on June 28, 2015, with an oversized, battered, and torn American flag, while on top of a police car, Lamar begins his lyrical anthem by chanting the infamous line from the movie The Color Purple. All's my life, I had to fight. This dialogue occurs in the classic movie with Sophia, played by Oprah Winfrey, declares her independence and refuses to let another man, including her husband, Harpo, brutalize or violate her ever again. In response to the use of Lamar's sample of her work, Alice Walker recounted, I'm happy for him. I think he's understanding that it is the truth of it, especially for poor people and people of color in this country. We've had to fight all our lives. And it's a good thing that we can talk about it across generations. Lamar's performance was not only a triumph that night on BET in 2015, it was also an exorbitant display of masterful lyrics that were further substantiated by having Black men on stage that were incarcerated. Others walked in a chain gang from the Jim Crow era, which illustrated that despite the madness of racism, white privilege, and oppression, there will always be hope that Black people will prevail and overcome. Scholar Narako Manambi elaborates further about his performance by writing, more than the lyrics themselves, it is a paratext of visuals in the form of performances and the music that has connected All Right with police brutality. On June 28, 2015, Lamar caused a controversy at the BET Awards when he performed a song on top of a police car, backed by the enormous projection of a tattered American flag. The symbolism of a police car, conquered by hip-hop graffiti and serving as a stage for African-American star, was evidently too much for Geraldo Rivera, who grumbled on Fox News, "This is why I say hip-hop has done more damage to young African-Americans than racism." Lamar retorted on TMZ that the song was about hope, not hatred, and refocused the problem of reality of police brutality rather than on the way it was being expressed in hip-hop. In contrast to his live performance at various venues, the video for All Right was shot in all black and white, which set the mood for several white policemen carrying a car while a young Black man is lying on the ground. This specific image can be perceived either as Paul Bear's carrying a coffin or bringing a symbolic death to the Black Lives Matter movement. By the end of the musical narrative, he was shot and killed by a police officer from a lamppost, but ultimately dies with a subtle smile on his face. As he falls to the ground after being shot to death, he attempts to complete the monologue that he started at the beginning of the video. Whether his lyrics are a masterful wordplay or politically motivated as a member of the hip-hop community, his activism and awareness are evident in the contemporary version of the Black anthem, known as All Right. Reminiscent of the famous We Shall Overcome protest song during the Civil Rights Movement with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Black nationalism of Malcolm X. When we talk about the systematic oppression, white supremacy, and the ultimate deaths of Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, George Floyd, and countless other Black people, mainstream music consistently avoids these issues. However, the chosen one, music consistently known as Kendrick Lamar, has never shied away from taking a stance as an artist and a conscious Black man, similar to much rap and hip hop. Lamar evokes past events and their surrounding cultural politics as a way of interpreting the present day issue of colorism in African American communities. He addresses a history of discrimination shared by Africans and African Americans based in Eurocentric colonial practices. Lamar's engagement relates to the blues matrix because through his music, he reinterprets ancestral experiences of discrimination as a way of understanding the pain caused by racism in the present, according to Hefferman. His words also evoke his memories as a child who grew up in a neighborhood full of gangbangers and crime and with minimal opportunities for survival. Therefore, it is his own self-awareness that is apparent as the foundation for his lyrics, All Right. Because while he knows that he has made it out of the hood, many African Americans, including Lamar, are still struggling to exist in the midst of police violence, systematic oppression, and overt discrimination, the vestiges which remain from slavery. While his lyrics are infused with jazz, African drums, and Afro beats, Lamar provides a definitive narrative of the Black struggle and engaging in political activism with cautious, optimistic backdrop that constantly looms in the background. For example, it was during the multiple protests across the country that the hard-hitting chorus, "We gonna be all right," channeled protesters' rage as they shouted it on the streets. Soon, videos of protesters chanting and thought pieces about the song's connection to the Black Lives Matter movement flooded the internet, according to Gilead. Moreover, the research into Lamar and his inspirations to write such a conscious and resonating song can benefit the systematic study of past artists such as James Brown and Marvin Gaye to contemporary artists and their protest and resistance music. Alternatively, we as a society can formulate a psychological analysis of Kendrick Lamar as an activist and his compositions in relation to the perceptual, sentimental, and social responses to the contemporary anthem, All Right. From either perspective, the rap song is and has remained a part of pivotal moments in 2015 for Black history and American tragedies. Saheed Joseph avows, All Right is a song that moves beyond Kendrick Lamar's personal tragedy, directing his words to be relevant to the larger context of the Black Lives Matter movement. According to Cone, the important contribution of the blues is their affirmation of Black humanity in the face of immediate absurdity. All Right is used as a protest song that affirms Black humanity in the context of police killing. The statement from Saeed captures All Right's necessity and validity as an anthem for Black Lives Matters movement and the continued struggle that Black people face every day of their lives in a place where all humans are allegedly equal. Then there's Lamar's fourth album release, Damn, in 2017, the most significant production of his career to date because it's garnered him a Pulitzer Prize for music. The album, according to music historians, won Best Rap Album, and it's the first of its kind to win a Pulitzer Prize despite it not being jazz or non-classical work. Lamar was bestowed this honor on April 16, 2018. According to History.com, it affirms that it was the first time the award had gone to a musical work outside the genres of classical music and jazz, a watershed moment for the Pulitzers and Lamar and a sign of the American cultural elite's recognition of hip-hop as a legitimate artistic medium. No other artist in hip-hop genre or history has received this exceptional award for their lyrical compositions. However, one can firmly disagree that Lamar winning it made him legitimate. To clarify this perception, the chosen one was an established, introspective, talented, and observant Black rapper from Compton, already crowned as the messiah by the hip-hop world long before the Pulitzer Prize board decided to characterize him as being legitimate. Even with this prestigious award, Lamar has remained humble. Coincidentally, the name of one of his hit singles from the Damn album, because he continued to produce effectual, conscious music, also found in the Black Panther soundtrack, where he's credited for writing 14 of his compositions. Over the course of 4 albums, Lamar has been awarded 13 Grammys. He's only trailing behind Jay-Z and Kanye West, both of whom have won 24 apiece. But music historians feel it will not be long before the chosen one surpasses them at some point in his career. However, when asked about his activism, his music, and his perception and his audacity to have hope that the Black struggle will eventually overcome, Kendrick responds by saying in an interview with Inoson Ahmad, I have a greater purpose, he says. God put something in my heart to get across. And that's what I'm going to focus on, using my voice as an instrument and doing what he needs to be done. What James Brown, Marvin Gaye, and contemporary artist Kendrick Lamar have done with their voices, self-awareness, and lyrical compositions have proven that as Black artists, they were and are aware of what's going on. And that did not stand, and they did not stand by and do nothing as they observed their people going through the struggle of white supremacy, racism, discrimination, and a plethora of societal ills that continue to hammer this country based on the atrocity from the past. What's more, even though Brown and Gaye were not politicians or Baptist ministers like Dr. King, they also experienced discrimination, police brutality, and overt racist acts of segregation as young Black boys who grew up in Washington, D.C. and Augusta, Georgia. Then their experiences were repetitive in the music industry, not being allowed to eat in restaurants with white people, being followed by the KKK, or seeing the multiple colored-only signs on buildings that they could only enter from the back as young men who were traveling the country on tour buses. As a result, these social experiences and the political stances are fully verbalized in Brown's Say It Loud and Gaye's What's Going On, as interpretive anthems from 2 legendary Black men who refused to let civil unrest go unnoticed, whereas Lamar, a contemporary artist born decades after Brown and Gaye, utilizes the lyrical thesis of All Right, not to spread hate, as Geraldo Rivera alleged, but to remind Black people that the struggle has not ended because we are still here, and in the words of Dr. King, we shall overcome. In closing, we must certainly thank James Brown, Marvin Gaye, and Kendrick Lamar for their contributions to the genre of protest music and resistance.
We want to thank Dr. Tamara Hill for that amazing read. Coming from a musical background, I know us as African Americans use music to express our feelings, and then it's an expression of who we are. And the music back then and in this day and time, it kind of speaks to what we deal with on the day-to-day basis, especially with police brutality, oppression, racism. So I applaud Kendrick Lamar and Marvin Gaye and James Brown for standing up for what they believe in. Being an artist, sometimes we get boggled down with so many things that goes on in our community, and having a purpose behind that gift, you need to make sure that you're changing someone's life in a positive, in a positive way. We can take it, a perception of what the music really is, but the story behind, the artist's gift and their music speaks a lot of, what they're feeling. So we do thank again Dr. Tamara Hill for that amazing read. And we're going to take a commercial break.